What's up, everybody? In the backyard again, and as you can tell, this video is gonna be about coffee. It's been a while, been focusing a lot on races and um, just all that preparation, so most of the content has been focused on that, and honestly, there hasn't really been anything that has been super pressing for me to talk about in regards to coffee. Um, but I have been processing a lot in regards to coffee and what direction the industry is taking. And a couple weeks ago, the US Barista Championship happened, and saw some of the routines, and they were very inspiring and also really well done. So if you would like, and I would suggest, just Google 2022 US Barista Championships, and those videos will be available on YouTube for you to check out. I think what I wanted to focus on is this idea of where is the coffee industry going? And I think the question that comes up in a lot of people's minds who are either new to specialty coffee or have been in it for a little bit is where is the best coffee? And I would say you are not gonna find the best cup of coffee in a cafe anymore. And I think some people might be put off by that comment. Some people might look at me and hey, you work in the coffee industry, why are you talking like that? The reality of it, though, is information is power. Information allows us to have progress, and the amount of information that is available to anyone is immense. And it's all about, if you're asking the right questions when you're Googling, or how bad do you want to learn this information and acquire this information, is all up to the individual. A lot of the information and the content that I use when I give instruction for my team members, it's not coming from the cafe because I'm providing that information. I'm looking it up and I'm gaining that information off of resources like Barista Hustle and even other coffee forums. And when I think about the cafe, you have your very entry level cafes who are doing specialty coffee where they will steam milk pretty well. They will use pretty good roasted coffee, and the execution might be pretty inconsistent. It's not so much about how great the coffee is, but it's more about how fast can they push out that coffee. And then you have your good cafes that will worry about and focus on how much coffee they're dosing in. They're dialing in every morning, so they're concerned about how much coffee they're dosing in, and they're weighing out their espresso, their output, and there's more of a focus on presentation in their latte art, in their beverages. And then you have where I believe the direction is moving towards, and where you're gonna find probably the best cups of coffee is with your home baristas, where they're able to use and utilize techniques and tools to really provide the best representation of that coffee. And it's not so much the fault of the cafe and they just don't care and they're just not good enough. I don't think that's it at all. But the purpose of a cafe is to, there's going to be multi-layers, but one, it's a business. So the first thing is they need to make money. And a lot of times time is money. So if they're spending a lot of time, curating each individual shot of espresso, you're gonna turn off a lot of the guests and the customers, and they might go to different cafes who might put out coffee a lot faster at higher volumes. So it's no fault of the cafe, but it's more of like that's just like the model of it. They need to produce coffee at a fast pace, and there isn't this flexibility of time where they can pull these amazing shots. And a lot of times the shots of espresso are going to be used for like specialty drinks with different syrups and whatnot. So then it comes down to like the owners of these establishments, like, okay, how worth it is it if I'm gonna like use a WDT to make sure that like each shot is like pulled perfectly? If you add like another additional screen, either at the bottom or the top of your puck, to make sure that your extraction is like super consistent. Like if you're gonna add 45 grams of vanilla syrup, or 50 grams of chocolate or whatnot into your beverage, like, is it worth it? And at the same time, it's like, okay, maybe you will only use these practices for espressos or other beverages that don't have syrups. Well, then how consistent are you, and are you devaluing the guests who are ordering these more like specialty beverages, like these like sweetened beverages? And I think it comes into like the values and the philosophies of your establishment. These are things that like most consumers don't think about. These are things that mainly if you own a business, you might not even think about it all that much. But from my perspective, like where I'm pushing training and education, and also consistency, and trying to see like where like what is new in the industry, and like what is the new practice and what is the best practice, like how worthwhile is it? And for me, there's always like this like tension, right? There's that tension of like wanting to put out the best, but at the same time seeing like how worth it would it be to do all these things. And from my honest opinion, I don't think it's really worthwhile in the cafe setting to do these additional steps, because you see where if you're gathering data and seeing as a cafe or coffee shop where your dollar is going and like what your guests are purchasing, it's like, okay, like from our shop's perspective, a reason why I haven't really pushed for us to use like WDTs or leveling tools or things like that is because we find it more important to have like this really standard like baseline for quality where it's kind of here, because most of the drinks that we're producing are like sweetened and probably would not benefit as much if we used these tools and practices that would give us like insanely good extractions. So I kind of have been thinking about where the next wave of coffee is, and sometimes like you might hear like, oh, like this is a third wave coffee shop, and whether or not you believe we're already in the fourth wave, which I think we're kind of getting there. I believe the fourth wave of coffee is gonna happen with the home baristas. The reason why is because the technology is for espresso machines and for coffee production is getting more it's becoming more approachable and accessible for the home barista. You know, you can get you can spend anywhere between like $300 for a decent machine, or good, I shouldn't say decent because that's where I'm gonna get at, for a good machine, up to like $7,000 for almost like a prosumer machine, meaning a machine that is used at home but could also be utilized in maybe a lower volume coffee shop. Then you have these really like technologically focused machines like the decent espresso machine, where you can on the fly mess around with flow rate, not even pressure profiling, but even like flow rate, which is insane. And you have so much more control over your shots, where you can pull like really standard espresso shots, or you can pull these turbo shots where, won't get into too much, but essentially it's this dose of coffee where it's like 17 grams of coffee, and then you will extract around like 50 grams, but your time needs to be, I believe, like around 20 seconds. Another thing that is important in this, another variable that's going to be important, is that you're pulling at about like 3 bars of pressure. So in the cafe setting, this is going to be really challenging because a lot of machines are meant to be these workhorses, and you're not going to mess around with like pressure profiling all that much. You're not going to be messing around with the bars of pressure. So you don't really have this flexibility to pull these types of like shots of espresso. Whereas at home, especially with like a decent espresso machine, which is a specific espresso machine, you can play with those variables on the fly. For me at home with my machine, I've already adjusted my bars of pressure down to 3 like way before, so I'm able to pull shots that are unique in this way, but also I can still pull like really standard shots. So yeah, that time flexibility that you would have at home, because you don't have to worry about making 15 to 30 drinks at one time. You're really focusing more on the quality of the coffee that you like. And I think the cafe, it's not really a place to have the best coffee, but it is the place to have the best experience. And those are two different things. And this is all about where to get the best cup of coffee, you know. And because, again, the access to information, the access to the equipment and technology, and the access and the flexibility of time, I believe the home barista is gonna be that next, like, they're gonna be like the forefront of like pushing coffee forward, you know. And I think that, again, could be a little bit controversial. It could be a little bit off-putting, but that's just the reality of it, you know. I don't think the consumer is at a place right now where they want to wait a really long time for their coffee. But you're seeing a lot of these home baristas who are, one, they're really pushing even the equipment side, you know, because of the technology of like 3D printing. They're able to like create specific pieces of equipment to make better coffee. And I think you're gonna see this happening more, where you have like these really smart people who might not work in the coffee industry but are just passionate about coffee but have like other skills, and they're able to like bring those two worlds together. And I think what you're gonna see is the cafes starting to peek into like what is happening because of like this shared, almost like open sourced like platform where like information is just going to be so readily available, and utilize a lot of these practices into the cafe, you know, as time goes on, to really better, you know, the overall like cups of coffee, and to have like better execution, better extractions, and overall better experience like in their places. So that's what I got for you today. Thanks for listening. It's kind of like a little rant, but also just like some thoughts that I've been having that I'm still kind of like unpackaging and unfolding. But thanks for listening. I'll catch you on the next one.